Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ms. Humbert here. Today we're going to be doing Unit 7, Notes 10. So we're going to be talking about the equations of circles. So let's just start by taking a look at what the equation is going to look like. So first of all, let's figure out what the equation of a circle is. First of all, we need to know what the center is. So the center is a point, and that's going to be HK. So the center is a point, HK. The radius is going to be represented by, conveniently, the letter R. So here's our center and here's our radius. Now the R represents the length of that radius. So what is the equation of a circle? Well, let's write it out. So what we're going to do is the x is always going to be in the equation. Then we're going to subtract or do the opposite value of the x coordinate of the center, and then we're going to square it. Then we're going to take our y and we're going to subtract or do the opposite of the y value of the center, which in this case is k, and then we're going to square it. And that equation right there is going to be equal to the distance of the radius squared. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at a couple examples of that. So for number 1, write the equation of a circle with its center at 1, -8 and a radius of 7. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take x, and then since this is a positive 1, I'm going to subtract 1 and then square it. And then I'm going to do y. And since that is a -8, I want to do the opposite. So it's going to be a positive 8. And then I'm going to square it. And then I'm going to take that and set it equal to the radius, which is 7 squared. So the last thing I need to do, there's only one more thing I need to do, and that's to actually square out the radius. So I'm going to keep this as x minus 1 squared, this as y plus 8 squared, and then that's going to be equal to 49. All right, next let's take a look at number 2. So we want to write the equation of this next circle. So again, we're going to plug in our center x, and then we're going to do minus since we want to do the opposite. And then we're going to do y, and the opposite of 1 is plus 1, and then we're going to square it. So again, we're just putting the opposite in each of those parentheses. And then since the diameter is 8, we need to think, okay, what's the radius going to be? Well, that's going to be 8 divided by 2, which is 4. So that's going to be equal to 4 squared. So now I want to simplify out that radius on the other side. So I'm going to have x minus 4 quantity squared, that's going to stay the same. Y plus 1 quantity squared, that's going to stay the same. And 4 squared is going to be 16. So that right there is your final answer for number 2. Next, let's take a look at number 3. So for number 3, we want to write an equation of a circle with the center at the origin. So what does that mean? Well, if the center is at the origin, that means it's at the point 0, 0. And the radius of the square root of 10. Well, let's go ahead and let's write that out. So we have x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared is equal to the square root of 10, and that's going to be squared. Well, it doesn't matter if we subtract by 0. X subtracted by 0 is going to be x squared. Y subtracted by 0 is going to be y squared. And then you're going to take the square root of 10 and you're going to square it, and that's going to give you 10. So then we get x squared plus y squared is equal to 10 for your final answer for number 3. Let's take a look at number 4. Write an equation of a circle with a center at 1, 1 that passes through the point -2, 4. So the first thing we need to do is calculate out the distance. That's what's going to give us our radius. So I'm going to calculate the distance from the center to this outside point. So remember that the distance formula is x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So right now we're going through the work and we're trying to find the diameter, or sorry, the radius. So we're going to plug those in. So we have x2 minus x1, and then we're going to have y2 minus y1. So then what we're going to end up having is this is going to be a -3 squared, which is 9, and this right here is going to be a -3 squared, which again is 9. So that is the square root of 18. Okay? And then when you take the square root of 18, just for our future reference, the square root of 18 is going to give you 4.24. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's write out that equation. So we have 1, 1. It looks like on your sheet it's negative 1, 1. Just use 1, 1 because that's what we've been using so far. So we're going to have x minus our center, y minus our center, so that's actually going to become a plus, and then it's going to be equal to 18 because the square root of 18 squared is 18. So the first thing we're going to do is graph our center. Our center is at negative, or is going to be over 1, up 1. Sorry, this should be a minus 1. Good gracious, I'm struggling. So we're going to go over 1, up 1. And then our radius is 4.24. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to go just a little past that. And then I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to go just a little past that. I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4 and just a little past that. And over 1, 2, 3, 4 and just a little past that. And then everyone's terrible at drawing circles, so don't, critique yourself too much. And then we've drawn our circle. So all I did was took our radius and I went left, up, right, and down so that I could draw my circle from there. Next, let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 5. If the equation of a circle is x minus 4 squared plus y plus 1 squared is equal to 9, state the center and the radius. So the center of the x-coordinate is going to be the opposite of that. So since it's a negative 4, the center is going to be a positive 4. Then, since it's a positive 1, the center is going to be a negative 1 because it's going to be the opposite coordinate. So our center then is 4, negative 1. Then we want to find the radius. Well, the radius is going to be the square root of that guy right there. Well, the square root of 9 is 3. So our center is 4, negative 1, and our radius is 3. So if the equation of a circle is x squared plus y squared is equal to 25, state the center. Well, if we notice, there's nothing being subtracted before the squared. So in order for nothing to be subtracted, well, that has to be at the origin. So that's going to be 0, 0 for our center. Then we want to take the square root of our radius. Well, the square root of 25 is just 5. So our center is at 0, 0, and our radius then is 5. Next, let's take a look at number 7. So it has a center at 2, negative 1 and passes through 0, 0. So again, the first thing we want to do is calculate out the radius, and we're going to do that by using the distance formula. So I have x2 minus x1, quantity squared, plus y2 minus y1, that's going to become plus a positive, squared. So then I end up having here negative 2 squared, which is 4, and then negative 1 squared, which is 1. So I end up getting that the radius is the square root of 5. Now, just as a side note, the square root of 5 is 2.24. So now what I need to do is I need to write my equation out. So it's passing through at the center at 2, negative 1. So I'm going to have x, and since the 2 is positive, I'm going to have minus 2, and then quantity squared, plus y. Now the 1 is negative, so it's going to become a positive 1, and then it's going to be squared. And that's going to be equal to the radius squared. Well, when you square the square root of 5, you get 5. So this right here represents our equation. Now we need to graph it. So when we graph it, our center is at positive 2, negative 1. So there's my center. Then square root of 5 is about 2.24. So from my center, I'm going to go over 2 and just a little bit past. I'm going to go up 2 and just a little bit past. I'm going to go left 2 and just a little bit past. And then I'm going to go down 2 and just a little bit past. And then I'm going to draw the best circle that I can surrounding that center point. It should look like your circle has a center at that point you originally marked. Finally, let's take a look at number 8. Write an equation of a circle where the diameter are at those points. So the first thing I need to do is calculate out the distance. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to do x2 minus x1, quantity squared, plus y2 minus y1. Well, that's going to become plus a positive. So then I end up getting 0 squared plus 11 squared. So really, that's just going to end up being the square root of 121, which is 11. Now remember that that 11 now represents the diameter. We need the radius. So to get the radius, we're going to take the diameter and divide it by 2. So then we end up getting 5.5 for our radius. So we need to find our center. Well, how on earth are we going to find our center? Well, our center has to be the midpoint between this and this. So think about that midpoint formula. Do you remember what we did? Well, to calculate a midpoint, what you're going to do is add the two x coordinates and divide it by 2. And then you're going to add the two y coordinates and divide it by 2. So then you end up getting 5 plus 5 divided by 2 is going to give you 5. Negative 4 plus 7 divided by 2 is going to give you 1.5. So this right here is your center. This right here is your radius. So let's go ahead and let's plug that in to our circle formula. So we're going to have x minus our x coordinate, which is 5, and then quantity squared. And then we're going to have y minus our y coordinate, and then quantity squared. And then we're going to take our radius, which is 5.5, and we're going to square it. Last thing I want to do is simplify that radius squared. So I'm going to leave this part the same, and I leave it the same because that makes it really easy to find my center. And I leave this part the same, and 5.5 squared is 30.25. So this right here is your final answer for number 8. So that concludes your note video for today. Thanks for listening.